In the heart of the Vatican, behind the closed doors of the Sistine Chapel, a new chapter in the history of the Catholic Church was quietly written. It was May 7, 2025, and the world watched with bated breath as 133 cardinals from across the globe gathered to elect a new pope following the passing of Pope Francis. But little did the world know, this conclave would unfold as one of the most miraculous and mysterious elections in church history. The first rounds of voting seemed inconclusive, filled with uncertainty. Yet, in the midst of it all, a humble cardinal from Peru, Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, stood as an unlikely candidate, rising to prominence in a way that no one had anticipated. His election, which would come only a day after the conclave began, left many stunned. But what was even more surprising was the near-unanimous support he received in the final rounds, a near-perfect consensus that could only be described as miraculous. What transpired in those 2 days of intense prayer and deliberation, behind the closed doors of the Sistine Chapel, would go down as one of the most significant moments in the Church's history. The initial rounds of voting on May 7 didn't yield a clear winner. In fact, the first round was nothing more than a preliminary poll. As the cardinals cast their votes, the tension in the air was palpable. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican's Secretary of State, seemed to have gathered the most votes, but no candidate came close to the required two-thirds majority of 89 votes. In fact, Cardinal Prevost, who was an underdog at the start, garnered only around 10 votes. However, even though the results of this round were not made public, the black smoke rising from the Sistine Chapel signaled that the election process was far from over. This would be the first of many signs that this conclave was like no other. The following days would see a change that no one had predicted. The cardinals returned to St. Martha's House to regroup. But it was here, over simple meals and hushed discussions, that the future of the Church would be shaped out. By the morning of May 8. The mood had shifted. The second round of voting was underway, and this time, something had changed. Cardinal Prevost, who had been relatively unknown to many of the cardinals, suddenly found himself the center of attention. His calm demeanor, humility, and strong ties with late Pope Francis began to resonate with those who were seeking a leader with a deep understanding of the Church's needs. Cardinal Prevost's votes steadily grew, and by the third round, he had secured the 89 votes needed to win. His election was now certain. But this wasn't just an election of a pope, it was an election of faith. Faith in the guidance of the Holy Spirit. This became evident in the unanimous support Cardinal Prevost received in the final rounds. It was almost as though divine intervention had led the cardinals to a clear decision. The result was a near-perfect consensus. With over 100 votes in favor of Cardinal Prevost, this level of agreement was a rarity, signaling a deep connection between the cardinals and the will of God. Pope Leo XIV, as he was to be known, was not just chosen for his intellect or theological standing. He was chosen because, in the eyes of the cardinals, he embodied the humility, wisdom, and spirit that the Church needed in this time of transition. His leadership would mark the beginning of a new era in the Church, one defined by compassion, unity, and an openness to modern challenges. As the cardinals gathered to celebrate their decision, the moment of revelation came. Cardinal Prevost, upon realizing he was about to be chosen as the next pope, showed a profound moment of humility. The 69-year-old cardinal, who had spent his life working in various roles throughout the Church, simply held his head in his hands. This wasn't a moment of personal triumph. It was a moment of awe in the face of the immense responsibility he was about to shoulder. This scene would become one of the most iconic moments of the conclave. Cardinal Prevost, despite being an unexpected choice, had earned the respect and admiration of his fellow cardinals through his humility, his calm demeanor, and his ability to listen and understand the diverse needs of the Church. The fact that he was elected with near unanimity was not only a testament to his character but also to the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Once the election was confirmed, the new pope was led to the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, where he addressed the people for the first time. What followed was a message that would resonate with millions around the world, a message of unity, mercy, and love. Be radiant lamps in the darkness of the world, Pope Leo XIV said, urging the faithful to bring God's love to everyone, especially the forgotten. In this speech, Pope Leo XIV outlined his vision for the future of the Church, one that emphasized the importance of living the gospel through actions, particularly by caring for the vulnerable and protecting the environment. His words, delivered with emotion and clarity, left an indelible mark on all who heard them. But while the Church was moving forward with its new leader, the outside world remained in suspense. Reporters from around the world scrambled to uncover the details of the conclave, but their efforts were in vain. The cardinals had sworn an oath of absolute secrecy, and the veil of confidentiality held strong. No leaks, no rumors, no details emerged from within the Sistine Chapel. The only information that trickled out came from unofficial sources, and even then, much of it remained speculative. Despite the efforts of the media, the cardinals' resolve was unshakable. The secrecy of the conclave was preserved, and it became clear that this was not just a matter of protocol but a deeply held belief that the process had been ordained by God. The cardinals, who came from every corner of the globe, were united in their faith that the Holy Spirit had guided them to make the right choice for the future of the Church in the aftermath of the conclave. As Pope Leo XIV began his papacy, the Church found itself in a moment of renewal. Pope Leo's message was one of inclusion, mercy, and social responsibility. He embraced modern challenges such as the growing crises of faith and the environment, and called on the Church to be a beacon of hope and compassion in an increasingly uncertain world. His ability to connect with the youth and his use of social media to spread his message of love and unity made him a pope for the modern age. But Pope Leo XIV was also a pope of humility. His reign was characterized by an openness to reform and a desire to make the Church more transparent, approachable, and responsive to the needs of the faithful. His papacy, still in its early stages, showed promise as a time of transformation both for the Church and for the world. Looking back on the conclave of 2025, it is clear that the election of Pope Leo XIV was not just the result of votes cast in the Sistine Chapel. It was a divine moment, guided by faith, prayer, and the will of the Holy Spirit. The near-unanimous support for Cardinal Prevost, a man who was largely overlooked at the start of the process, speaks to the power of humility and divine providence. In the end, the conclave of 2025 was more than just the election of a new pope. It was a miraculous event that highlighted the strength of the Church's faith and the power of prayer. Pope Leo XIV's reign promises to be one of hope, unity, and renewal for the Catholic Church and the world at large. His election is a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected choices are the ones that lead to the greatest transformation.